And we have absolutely entered the time clock. Cycles up. Perhaps we should learn something from the ancients about distributed power as our food source goes bye-bye. Hey, and welcome back for the second half of Mini Ice Age Conversations right here on Brighteon TV every Friday, 2 to 3 p.m. David Dubine, your host. Just before the break, talking about the UK tomato rationing, digital get you on the system as an excuse, debacle happening there, as well as the gas shortages in Kazakhstan also to get you to accept limited resources on a monthly basis. Well, suppliers for some of these vegetables going up into the UK are Morocco as a main supplier, as well as Spain. They've had massive cold damage to their crops this year. Morocco, unfortunately, also has been accompanied by a drought. So Morocco has banned all exports of all foodstuffs, even to other East African nations, let alone the UK. But the UK government's spouting off like, how dare you keep all those tomatoes for yourself in your own country. I know if you don't sell to East Africa, that's cool, but we better get our tomatoes. And if your people need to go hungry, that's just too bad. You get our tomatoes up here. And again, these talking points, so demeaning, like talking down to the country, like you let your people starve. We're more important than you. And, this messaging coming out of the UK is just downright scary. It's almost like, schoolyard bully on double espresso that lost their house or something. It's ridiculous. Like, you give us everything, we just don't care anymore. So the suppliers are down there are starting to lose contracts as well, where the government is limiting itself. So you're starting to see the same thing happen in Morocco. Okay, they're limited on food supplies there. If you lose your business, your small family-run business, because they can't facilitate contracts and you're in litigation, too bad. We saw that all through COVID, did we not? I personally think, just my opinion, that it was a just purposeful destruction of all mom and pop businesses, small, medium businesses, because you're only relying, there's only box stores left. And they're going to do their own mandates outside governmental laws, or it's a store policy. You're really railroaded and cattle corralled into just box stores right now. Big corporate entities control all the supply chain. That's really all that's left. There might have been a couple that reopened. And I don't really consider Trader Joe's a mom and pop store, but it's back open. But to go to the very local stores, a huge swath of those were removed during COVID. So now what happens when you're going to have to jump through hurdles and fire hoops to get into the box stores on the next emergency, whatever it is. But you can see this swinging across many nations. Now, here's the thing I didn't understand. Even though Morocco's in a drought, I get it. Weather changes, climate can shift over thousands of years. Why did they not tap the Souss, S-O-U-S-S, aquifer and use that for irrigation? Gaddafi in Libya was tapping the Nubian sandstone aquifer and bringing water resources from beneath the earth to go out and irrigate hundreds of thousands of hectares. So multiply by 2.4 for acreage. And they were doing sorghum crop out in the desert. So what they'd mapped out is previous estuary drain-off areas in southern Libya. And they were putting and respilling water out there from that aquifer that's, thousands of cubic kilometers of water beneath the earth. And now a quick word from Patriot Gold Group. Have you kept up with the big headlines so far this year? Bank of America says that gold should be a mainstay investment for the next 3 years. Big banks and billionaires agree on two things. We're heading toward a recession and investors need to buy gold. The Patriot Gold Group is introducing the 2023 Recession Protection No Fee for Life IRA. Mention ADAPT 2030. You're going to get the best in-class service from Patriots protecting Patriots. Patriot Gold Group has the No Fee for Life IRA, where your 401k or IRA can be in physical gold or silver on qualifying rollovers. That's 888-546-7020 to reach out for your free investor guide today. Keep in mind, Patriot Gold Group is Consumer Affairs top-rated IRA gold dealer 6 years in a row. That's 888-546-7020. 7020. And now on with the video. So I look at this and I say, this is the very same problem that Kazakhstan has. They say they have these vast natural resources under their feet, all these gas fields, but they just can't get to it, and there's shortages because they can't produce enough electricity with all this literal trillions of cubic meters of gas sitting right under them. Well, this is the same thing. I just don't get it. How has Morocco in the last 20 years not gone on at least a minimal agricultural drilling for water resources that are continually replenished? You know, here in the middle of the United States with some of the aquifers, it takes 100 years for it to come from, say, the Gulf of Mexico or the Pacific Ocean to replenish that, along with the groundwater or that's seeping in from the surface after rains. Got to realize Morocco's right on the Mediterranean Sea and the Atlantic. It is having two sides replenish it through that sandstone strata being filtered, removing the salt as it comes in some 50 to 100 miles, continually replenished off the Atlantic and the Mediterranean. Gaddafi was super excited, praising, jumping to the high heavens, saying, "Thank you, Lord, for giving us so much water that's continually replenished just from the Mediterranean Sea." They understood the mechanics of the refill, the filtering coming off of. So they demarcated what was sort of brackish. Even if you drilled into it, even though it was in 30 miles from the coast, it was still brackish. Even down in the substrate where they were removing the water. So they would come in about 100 miles. And the further you got away from that, the more pure the water was. But they were finding as soon as you pulled it out, it was just refilled. Primary water. So I'm really curious why Morocco hasn't gone to the same, because the Nubian sandstone aquifer under the earth connects to this Sousse aquifer. There's an entire band across there that Tunisia, northern Chad and a few other countries could take advantage of for below ground water resources here across the Saharan desert. So Niger also was in conjunction working with Libya at that southern portion where the previous African megalakes were. That's why as the megalakes dried out, they became estuaries. And if you could refill some of these same areas, gravity would take over for you and irrigate croplands. So, step back 6,000 years where the African megalakes were. 4,000 years, 3,000 years. Now the water's going to pool in the same exact areas. Now, whoever controls this area here is going to control the world's food supply moving forward. So this is another hot spot to look for, and it is that Kazakhstan will be next, and this whole Sahel area will be the new ag zone setup. It's going to have to be decentralized power and use of some sort of stablecoin, decentralized stablecoin, to be able to pay everybody who's working, that they could, earn their money and just go back to their own individual nations with stablecoins to be able to convert to their local currency. Once you get those two things, decentralized power, you get the irrigation in there, you're looking at the world's largest grow zone there. It exceeds the United States in terms of size and acreage. So since we're talking about the spring planting season, a lot of agriculture, some of you out there going, well, tell us something useful about the ag. Okay. These are the 6 most productive fruits and vegetables for beginners. Now, those of you who grow, if it's your first time, I so applaud you. Thank you so much for getting out and getting involved. It's going to take all of us, like we did with Victory Gardens, to move through this. So if it's your first year to delve into any kind of gardening, thank you. You're going to be part of the solution. So the easiest ones for you to put in the ground first that are almost a no-brainer that can come up, windsap apples. If you're going to plant an orchard, go for the windsap, at least down here in the Southeast U.S. Bush beans, those are real easy to grow. You don't even need any trellising. Cucumbers, the peppers, those are great. And tomatoes, the cherry tomatoes for us had the best result. The larger like beefsteak tomatoes, there was a lot of water and they get some mold in there, but we found the cherry tomatoes, as long as you keep that leaf and the airflow in there, they have a massive production off those cherry tomatoes. Yellow squash, and then zucchinis. Okay, maybe you don't like them. So, and you say, well, I want something that's going to produce a mega amount of veg coming off on my first year. You're going to want to go to that second list, the fastest growing. So if you're talking about in terms of putting something in the ground, yeah, you'll have to wait a little bit longer for a bush bean. But if you put arugula in, you're going to be eating salads like a month before the bush beans are ready to pick. And I like bush beans fresh, different types. Black-eyed peas, by the way. May not be on this list here, but black-eyed peas, you can just go buy them in any supermarket in those bags for like $2. It's in a little cellophane plastic bag. You can plant those, and those beans are absolutely unbelievably delicious when they're green. You just cut them up and stir fry them. But the beets also, you can eat the leaf while that's growing. So if you have the beets in the far end there, you have the radishes. You can cut those leaves, stir fry them, and also have a secondary dish while the root crop is growing. Now, obviously, don't strip all the leaves off. Pick a few. So if you have, let's say you have 10 beet growing and 10 radish, you could probably clip 2 leaves, big leaves, off of each one of those. So that'd be a girthy handful of leaf, and they'll just replicate each day. And then you can get your method there for snipping, and then it'll regrow. And then if it gets a little lean, let it rest for a minute. Carrots, you can definitely eat all the shoots off of that. There's tons of recipes for that. So just put this in your quiver of information here. Fastest growing and then most productive. They're a little bit different, but both will help you if you're delving into gardening. And this is great here. Now, food is going to be the number one thing that's going to tip everybody over into social chaos. It'll roll here to the U.S., but it's going to be last behind all these other nations. So this is the World Bank Food Security Report. And for anybody who's out there into, let's say, emerging markets, or if your place of embarkation or debarkation for a resource is coming out of these, your loading port is in one of these nations, your main supplier is from these nations here. I've started to do a little analysis on how I think you can pinpoint those nations that are going to go into social unrest first. And the World Bank already kind of lined it out, but they have the information, but I'm just interpreting it in a different way to show you the social unrest hotspots, or the inverse, what I would consider to be the areas that are going to remain more stable longer. Use it however way you like. Once you see the way to interpret the chart, it'll make total sense. You can use this in any way, shape, or form that you would like. Like, some people want to bet on the chaos and know that there'll be a currency collapse and then do something with that, going short in a market as well. There's many ways to look at it. I just, on the ag side, have a few people who were pulling barley out of Argentina, and that was the whole thing that set me on this trek here. So red is elevated percentages of food inflation. Purple is extreme, anything over 30%. Yellow is down into the manageable, and green is sitting at, there's no problem there. You're pretty much near 0 or below. There could be some subtractions like Liberia. Green, 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 yellow. Okay, that, for me, it looks really stable at the moment. But places like Burkina Faso, they were red and then they turned purple. And if you look at the third entry down there, Burundi, this is a good example. They're red, which is incredibly elevated inflation, but now they're trending toward above 30% in the purple. These are the inflation hotspots that are going to lead to civil unrest first. The prices keep going up and up and up to the point where people become so agitated and their daily life needs cannot be met because it's just too much spent on food. Pakistan, 45% of all of the monthly income or daily income, however you like to break it down, goes to purchasing food. That's massive. In America, a few years ago, before all the inflation and the COVID, we were spending around 5%, some of the lowest in the world. Now that has gone up greatly. We're about 12% now. It's a massive shift. My grandparents and my parents, and almost a century coming through, including myself being alive, we ran at 5% of what we earned every month to push into food. Even in the 1970s, that didn't really run up much, maybe 8%, 9%, but it came back down after the gas crisis and all that thing alleviated. And interest rates rose, came back down under 20%. Except for that little flare in time, for almost 100 years, we have been at the most minimal amount of our incomes to purchase food. Well, that is quickly changing, and we're into 10 to 13% if you look at shadow stats versus the official government figures. So let's interpret the chart here. Ethiopia, just straight up purple. Now, they don't have a band like a black if it goes up above 50. I wish they did. But Ethiopia, you're looking at 41%, 43%, these sort of thing. That's just nearly impossible to have a daily life with if you're spending that much on food and the percentages are running away from you and your wages are stagnant and you're still living on $2 a day, but everything just increased 50%. That is a recipe for disaster, recipe for civil unrest. So, but Liberia, like I say, if you're looking at that, all right, they were at negative food. I like that. Go negative. Every time I buy food, it's going to cost me less and less. I'll sign me up. I'll take two. But you see it trended to yellow, which means just a little increase, under 10%. But if that continues in the same way that all these other nations do, then the yellow will eventually turn to the red, which will eventually turn to purple. So what I'm looking for in either direction is red going to purple, as for sure they're going to head into civil unrest. So off this first chart here that we have, if you're going to look for civil unrest hotspots, Burundi, Ethiopia, Rwanda, and Sierra Leone would be my, and maybe in Malawi also would be my hotspots to keep your eye on for those out of that entire list. Now look at Rwanda, for example, second from the bottom. See how it was at moderate food inflation that moved to yellow and then red and then purple? That is a perfect example of what I'm talking about, running the gamut so quickly within a 1-year period. People are going to be so angry. The difference is Ethiopia, they've been straggling the entire year at above 35%. So the anger is already kind of baked into the daily workings there. So if you had to choose one of these that would flare first based on, I would say Rwanda, because the stability went to unstable in such a short amount of time that's where the anger boils over. People have already vented their anger in Ethiopia. It's been like that for more than a year. What can they complain another time? I wish they would. I feel bad for somebody paying that much for food. But in terms of stability to anger to non-compliance, that happens real rapidly. Rwanda would be it right there. And Benin, I'm putting that right at the safety zone, safe. And as well as Bolivia and Bhutan, but I wanted to, try to keep in Africa. So Benin is right down near Ghana and Togo. Algeria, Angola, okay. Ghana is another one down there that I would say would experience civil unrest, because you notice how they've gone from moderate inflation from 17% up to 50%. That's people getting really angry. Well, you see the electric flashing and people getting really angry at that time. So you can do this and work it through any nation or continent that you want to. There's Ghana. I had that highlighted there. And if we do jump into Asia, the People's Republic of Laos, some people call it Laos, but the name is Laos. That would be trending from, again, 5%, 6%, suddenly 48%. People get angry, and it's within a year period. So use this the way you possibly want to interpret it. The world's your oyster, I guess. Information is information. Chains. So there really is no more vinyl chloride. I burned and it changed molecular structure. So they're telling the truth. It's not there. It changed to dioxins. That's what they need to be testing for. But I found it so apropos. If you look on the front of the locomotive, what do you see on the very front there? The black horse. You can't tell me that that's just a coincidence, that they're setting up for one of the largest land destructions in one of the most fertile areas of crop zone in America. And you have the horse of the famine, the black horse, on the very carriage and carrier that caused the environmental disaster that's going to take off part of America's farmland. You can't make that up. I really cannot even. I sat there for a few minutes when I was putting the slide really? They're broadcasting it that in your face. Yeah, black horse, we're going to create the famine. We're going to take your farmlands off. But I bet, again, they'll have some nanobot remediation that Gates will own, and they'll buy up and swoop up all that farmland for 1 penny on the dollar. And they'll own literally 2 states of farmland in Pennsylvania and Ohio that they bought for $4. And they'll set all these nanobots to clean it out and show what a great, and they'll own all this farmland. Something like that I would anticipate, just the nefariousness of those characters anyway is beyond compare. So, thinking about crop production, you could talk about it in many ways, shapes, and forms, but I really do have some solid numbers now. Crop production in the Southern Hemisphere is absolutely getting to the failure rate at this point, where once these numbers are calculated, there's going to be a lot more price increases in food. Really, there are going to be. It's just going to take a few more months. Now, the farmers in Brazil in Mato Grosso, they were trying to get the second corn crop, which is actually the largest crop. First corn crop in Brazil is the smallest of the crops. Second corn crop is the largest crop. They're behind. It's just so wet that they can't get it in the field, and they're worried about the seeds rotting before they germinate. So the rain's been delaying the field. You can see where the red line is on where they sit on the different averages there, well below. Now, if it continues, and as I believe it's going to continue, it's going to rapidly cool, setting into fall, and it's going to get even wetter, and they're going to lose 30 to 40% of their planted corn. Now, the food price rises and civil unrest is also occurring in Brazil. In addition to the election woes and all of this political happenstance, look at what the Sao Paulo food inflation is running. Since January 15th, it went from 300 to 800. It's more than doubling. People, again, they get pretty angry when their food prices double. Not even up 50%, doubling. And the food index, if you look at that back, January 2021 was around 300 and it moved to 600, doubling. That's every possible food. So when they're talking their CRB food index, that's all the basic food staples lumped into one basket as a percentage versus just the food inflation in Sao Paulo itself. And as we look at the temperatures across Sao Paulo, third coldest in 50 years. And this is why I'm saying in these areas like Rio Grande do Sul, they were already record cold and having massive cold damage and wet events that's limiting production. So, looking at this February 18, 19, this is in the middle of the summer in the Southern Hemisphere. And look at this record. Look at that cold, 15 degrees, 20 degrees Fahrenheit below normal. Now you can imagine the amount of precipitation that's going to come down and start ruining crops here. Argentina's soy production, down, down, down. They keep revising it, and that's going to continue down. 23 is going to be even lower than that. It's going to be minus 25%, as well as the barley. And if we look at the weekly averages here, the weekly outlook, soy previously forecast is dropping from 43 million tons to 38 million tons. That's a huge drop in a single month. And then if we look at the corn in the second bar, dropping from 52 million tons to 44 million tons. That's like a 10 million ton difference, or 20% of their total crop. Yeah, this is happening everywhere on the planet. The cold continues through February. And what I wanted to show you here, what looks like an electrical magnetic field line that whatever weather patterns seem to be following it, and you can see how it spins into a vortice as it goes down. But for me, I'm looking at an electromagnetic or a magnetic field line on the planet illuminated following clouds, or the clouds are following the magnetic field line. And if you look right in Australia, you'll see the exact same thing, part of a magnetic field line in the following. So New Zealand got hit with this all-time record rain, and we have absolutely entered the time clock. Cycles up. Perhaps we should learn something from the ancients about distributed power as our food source goes bye-bye. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.